What is up, you heathens and demons, you sinners and saints, you beautiful, blasphemous people? Welcome back to Seeing Red. What's up, Allie? We got Allie and we got Richard in the house. What's going on?
Alright, sup all 8 of you, 7 now.
We shall grow. We're competing with with the juggernaut. I chose the purple background in honor of Shannon Q tonight. So we're competing with Shannon Q. Not much you can do when slapped around by a juggernaut, but we are consistent, Allie. We show up.
Damn it!
At 8 o'clock, like so consistent. I gave up having an extra night at work next week. I was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'm gonna do that. And then I was like, no, wait. And my boss was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I kind of scheduled Dr. Josh and Megan Digital Hammurabi, and I'm not going to miss that. So
well,
we are
Thursday,
consistent.
We're supposed to be getting the manatee himself if he doesn't end up deciding to bitch out because you missed him on Friday.
Yeah, Brett is a bit upset with me, and he's going to be really mad at you for calling him that if he does come on Thursday.
Oh, no, I didn't call him that. I said if he doesn't decide to bitch out because he's mad at you, as in if he doesn't decide to cut out. Like, honestly, it's not your fault you had to work.
And I don't think he understood that. He hasn't responded back. He got a little mad that I didn't come into a stream. But there is other, I didn't fill you in. There was, a stream before that when I told him I would come on. And then,
that was the night that I had the PL stream, and then, you weren't getting the links and stuff, there was technical things, and then the
I was mixing up the damn time zones. They are the bane of my life. So when Brett tells me 7 o'clock, I'm thinking 7 o'clock. I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be right there at 7 o'clock, but shortly after. So shortly after 7 o'clock my time, I'm, ready to go, right? And he doesn't start till 8 o'clock his time. I mean, it's really weird. Why would you put it on the stream 7 o'clock if you're not starting at 8 o'clock your time? It is 7 o'clock his time. It confuses me, and it just threw me off.
See, this is why I just auto-convert everything when I'm talking to you into EST. That way you're just never confused.
I know,
we're 3 hours apart. You'd be even more confused if I was talking to you in Pacific time, right? I had lunch with a friend today.
I hate time zones.
1 o'clock my time, and you'd be like, 1 o'clock? What do you mean? You're not even awake then.
I hate time zones. I have some really good friends in the UK, and because they're fucking so far away, it's really hard to get them on the channel, right? And when I went on Utah Outcast, I had to stay up super late that fucking night. I felt like I was on third shift again.
So, what's up, guys? We are just having a chill stream after all of the incredible heavy that we had for Thursday, which thank you so much to our audience for turning up, for listening to that message. There was some hard shit on that stream. We had a hard time playing some of that stuff. We had a hard time talking about some of that stuff. I was baked by the end of it, which is why I ended up British. I don't know if anybody caught that, but I ended up having to smoke to deal with my back pain. Thank you guys so much for coming for that. We were definitely trying to kind of expose some of the very harmful things that have been done and set the record straight on a lot of claims that were being made against us and those that we love on this channel. Because let's face it, Cirrus and his crew, they're friends. They're genuine friends. They're not just, colleagues. I talk to them regularly. Knock talks to them relatively regularly. These are our actual friends that got actually hurt right here.
Yeah, and unlike Messenger's claims, I actually consider Cirrus and Ocean, real friends. We're gonna meet in real life. We've talked about it type shit.
If it weren't for the blizzards, friends. You and I would have met in real life a couple weeks ago.
I consider Dragknot and Sokka are internet friends. We don't know we're not on that level. But Cirrus and Ocean, we've been cool for well over a year now, and total respect there. So it was a great stream. I appreciate everybody that showed up. It ended up being our number one watch stream live. We had more live viewers than we had ever had before at one point. So, it was a really good night.
It's currently our second highest viewed video on the channel, too, and it's still climbing. And it's got pretty dang good viewer retention for a 4 hour.
Well, it's our second highest viewed live stream in a while. Especially this year, especially. I've had much higher than that back in the day. Back when YouTube wasn't destroying me in their algorithm. So
well, that's what I'm saying is right now, for this month, it's our top video, I think, too.
Well, I think it's probably our top video or our top live stream for the year. I could be wrong about that. There's a couple MLB streams.
It's our top. It's our top video for the. It's our top viewed live stream for the year. We had the most concurrent watchers on it too. At one point, we had 155 people.
Yeah, I never had that many before in a stream. So I just want to, it was good shit, good shit. And I'm going to announce I'm going to get to work on a condensed version of that stream. So I'm going to kind of highlight some of the important areas, talk about it in retrospect, and then kind of direct you to the stream if you're interested in more. Especially considering, again, and Richard, I know I think you're still friends with Messenger, but considering his response, or lack of, I think he was supposed to come out with some great,
he said he was supposed to stream over the weekend, yeah. but we haven't. But his only response was during the testing stream, which has now been taken down of PASIC's channel, by the way, so we can't reference it and showcase it, because you know us. If you watch that video, you know that we're very into receipts, guys. When we spill the tea, we make sure that the cup is branded and that, the words that are being used are from the mouth of the person we're claiming we made the claim. We can't do this time. That stream is not accessible. It's either been privated or taken down entirely. I don't know. It ain't there. But on that stream, and there are Discord messages and stuff of us talking about it with multiple people who viewed it, so take that for what you will as far as evidence goes.
Yeah, I saw it.
He made the claim that he was too drunk to argue properly, addressed the veteran stuff, and then fuck all crickets on everything else. And also they kind of made fun of us for saying that he was dangerous. They also made the claim that we said he was the most dangerous man on YouTube, which is hilarious because none of us said that. We just said that he was dangerous and that platforming him could potentially expose him to more victims that he could hurt the way he hurt Aaron. Which is true. We showed on stream definitively that definitely happened. So I don't understand what claims he's taking issue with, apart from the whole VA statistics. And even then, the difference between 16 and 22 is not as significant as the fact that there are 16 a day still veterans that are killing themselves. That is a fucking problem. That is a major fucking problem. If there's one veteran a day killing themselves, that's a fucking problem. But 16 is a huge problem. You know what I mean? I don't understand why the hell you're so hung up on the goddamn numbers. Unless you just have to be right, in which case we were correct. So.
For me personally, this is one of those topics that I think in the larger picture, we're not going to want to argue about eventually. Mm-hmm. And we're going to come to agreement on things like this. We're going to come to agreement on the LGBT community. We're going to come to agreement on a lot of things that we argue about right now. So,
people were arguing whether or not black people were people, less than 100 years ago.
Sure.
And now, we're at the point where people are arguing about what actually constitutes racism, not whether or not racism is a problem.
Now we're arguing
right? We've made progress.
Now we're arguing about whether those brown people from south of the border are people.
They are.
It's a different set of brown people.
I can settle that right now. Yes, they're people.
Well, duh. It is the position of this channel that all people are people. Some of them might be shitty people. Any people could be shitty people, but they're all people still.
But you ever notice how racist? Sorry.
No, go ahead, Richard.
You ever notice? You're so nice, man. You ever notice how racist the word racist is? It suggests that we human beings have separate races. We don't.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're all one. I get in trouble when I say that one day I think that we'll all be one color.
I think that ethnicity is real, but race is not.
You hate culture.
There is no such thing. There are Spanish people. There are not white people. There are English people. There are Scottish people. There are Irish people. White people is a political classification. It's not an actual definable category.
That can only happen. That's like a possibility way in the future if we don't kill ourselves or our planet first. So.
No, eventually we'd all end up a very nice tan color with dark chestnut brown hair. That's what we'd end up.
Well, there's some interesting epigenetic research that suggests that even, lighter-skinned people end up, even without, intermarriage into, ethnic cultures in the area, do end up darker over time, because it appears that there are some epigenetic traits that get triggered where, even people who are lighter skinned, a couple generations down the line, end up producing more melanin in response to
last time I said this, I got a bunch of scientific comments, and I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, but, I don't know. That was pretty much my response. I don't know. It's just, to me, like the more we I like culture. Like, I get accused of not liking culture. I actually love culture, and I think that we should all try to adopt the best of every culture and be accepting of every culture. I'm definitely not for the destruction of culture. Just look at my work on Native American peoples.
Right on.
But just one day, I think that we'll all probably be, if not the same color, like fairly fucking close, and it won't even fucking matter anymore.
Well, but yeah, and again, like it's not even like you can be exactly the same skin tone in radically different culture, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
You could be,
Exactly.
Like black British people are still British people. You know what I mean? Like many of them were still raised in Britain. They've integrated into the culture. If they've moved there, etc. Like, and I don't even think you should have to integrate into the culture if you immigrate somewhere, right? Like, as long as you're living by the laws and everything else, like it's still possible to retain some parts of yourself.
Well, yeah, I think that you can keep all of your culture and still integrate into the new culture, because I think a lot of cultures actually share the same values. You just express it in different ways, different languages.
I think humans share a lot
easy.
of the same values. It's just a matter of how people tend to process and showcase them, right?
Exactly. But we're here to talk to Richard. I don't think I have any... Did we say that Brett Keane might not be happening? We did say that. Digital Hammurabi is definitely happening a week from tonight, 7 Eastern. So it'll be an hour earlier, but that is definitely happening, and we're going to be interviewing them about what they've been doing on their channel, Dr. Josh's book. Super excited to have them on the channel. But we are here to talk to Richard. I told Richard he can pretty much lead the conversation.
I might ask him a few questions about the Demon Pazuzu, too, because, like, for Film Crusade purposes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You better squeeze him in there while you got him, Allie. So.
I tell you what, if you can get Dr. Josh and Megan on your channel, those are some serious folks with some serious scholarship under their belt.
Oh, yeah.
And they're really sticking to... They're sticking to make... I mean, you can get them to give an opinion if you ask for an opinion, but they'd better be clear you're asking for an opinion.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in opinion. Like, I go to them for historical fact, especially if I'm looking at that time period. And sometimes like they'll be talking about stuff that I don't even really know, and if I have time, I'll just sit in there and try to listen and learn. Because when you're dealing with people that are that smart, that have the credentials like that actually do the fucking work, the field work, then you better damn well take advantage of it. So I'm super excited. I'm super stoked. And I do, like, that is one channel that I do make time to at least catch the playbacks, because you're only going to learn if you're watching Digital Hammurabi. But I do have all the links in the description below tonight. I actually put like a lot of links in the description below. One of those is Richard's channel, so go subscribe to him, because he's drastically undersubscribed. Like, holy shit! I'm sure that you probably get a lot of hate from Christians because how are you so? I mean, people need to subscribe to you. You are doing really good work. Your
thank you.
Meeting in Eden series has been really good. You've had a lot of good conversations on there.
Where's the goddamn pod, Knock? Like, you actually took a nap and took care of yourself. You rested. You didn't work for a whole weekend on video stuff. And now you actually got shit in the description before the video launched? Like...
Don't know how to act.
Where's the frickin' pod? Like...
Invasion
of the Body Snatchers. Like, it's happening right now, guys.
I had a very productive day today.
It started with this channel.
I got about 4 hours of WoW in. I streamed earlier on my smaller channel. I even got that link in the description below. So if you're interested in my smaller channel where I just hang out, I try to play video games while I talk, but I end up just talking.
And where our contentious videos may or may not be moving at some point in the future.
Yeah, we're still... I talked about that today. So if you're interested in that, you can subscribe there. But yeah, I've had a very productive day today. I feel really good. I'm coming out of this illness I picked up on Thursday, so it's been my first day of actually being active. Got a video done, cleaned the house, played some World of Warcraft. It's been a good day.
All right, so Richard, what are you interested in talking about today? Because it looks like you got something that you're drawing there.
I decided to do some drawings of stuff that's described in the Bible, and this is just something I'm going to let play in the background. I have these videos available if someone wants to view them, although I'm keeping them private, and I'll give someone a link if they want it. That's a two-dimensional representation of chapter 21 of the book of Revelation, or the foundation of the wall of heaven. That's what that one is. The other one is creating the drawing that's over my right shoulder. step by step. That's what the other one is that might play later, depending on how long we go. Each one of them take about an hour and 15 minutes or something like that. Yeah, I thought today, since Naka is going to be doing further series on the book of Genesis, that we'd crawl right into the garden with Adam and Eve is what I thought we'd do.
Alrighty, so what do you, like, I guess start us off, since Naka's working on that video still.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did do my Genesis chapter 1 is stupid. I'm fairly familiar with the story. I have read it several times. I haven't read chapter 2 specifically in a while, but I will be looking at that this week and doing that video. So, yeah, I love the Adam and Eve conversations. I have a feeling that our conversation regarding Adam and Eve is going to be slightly different than the conversation I had with Jill about Adam and Eve.
I hope so.
So, yeah, I'm looking I think this will be a good one.
Yeah, I think that if I took the Christian doctrinal view of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and I broke it down to their belief system, that they blame woman and they blame mankind for all evil in the earth. And I think just that very first premise has got to be flawed. Unless the person says it was in the nature of the serpent and the serpent wasn't actually evil when it tempted Adam and Eve, specifically Eve. Because if the serpent was there and the serpent was evil, then the serpent brought evil into the world, not Adam and Eve. They only became fooled or tricked. What do you think of that idea?
Well, here's my favorite sort of way to look at this, is it doesn't make a lot of sense to argue that a creature that does not understand right from wrong has free will. And at that time, no matter how long Adam and Eve had been around, the Bible makes it explicitly clear that they didn't know they were naked and that being naked was wrong until after they made that fruit. Now, some Christians that I've talked to, including a pair of Jehovah's Witnesses that showed up at my door yesterday, that I decided, all right, well, let's get into a debate. If anybody here hangs out in our Discord, I wrote up a thing on that. If Brett Keane does not show on Thursday, we're going to probably do a live share stream kind of on a topic related to that. Because there was some interesting debate that started with the concept of free will in Adam and Eve, but it ended with some pretty dark stuff about their church and made me angry at the entire concept of abusive Christian churches. Yeah. But the argument here is they did not know that disobeying God was wrong because they didn't know that being naked was wrong. So, basically what happened was that if Adam was perfect, Eve was made of a piece of him, according to the Bible. She was also to complement him, but also somewhat imperfect because she was considered to be less than him.
Why?
It's the way the Bible is written. Like, that's kind of what the argument often is. Like,
no,
Eve
what's
was less
the less
than him.
part? Where's the part that indicates she's less?
The fact that she was created to be his servant and helpmate.
Helpmate, yes. Servant is nowhere in any text.
But the point being that she, came from him, etc. Let's even argue that both of them were perfect. If they didn't know good and evil, and they disobeyed God, then he punished toddlers for being toddlers rather than teaching them anything. And he punished them with not only excruciating pain and limited life, which for an immortal being is an absolutely awful, awful fucking punishment, right? Like, he also punished Eve with eternal pain from birth, and he punished us, all of humanity, every child that they would ever have for the rest of eternity, with disease and suffering and sickness, and one would argue at that point hellfire, because death was not a possibility for humans prior to that, so hell would have had to be created around the same time, because sin would not be possible without the knowledge of good and evil. So effectively, a toddler did something they weren't supposed to, and God went, all right, I'm going to burn the whole motherfucking house down.
Well, yeah.
The child snuck into the cabinet, Child snuck into the cabinet and got a cookie, and because of that, God burns the house down around the child. Yeah, that makes no sense. Although I have to say what you said is in keeping with Christian doctrine.
Well, so I don't want to get too far ahead on this conversation, and I have a few questions. But before we get there, I pointed out as I read Genesis chapter 1 that it clearly says that a woman was created before Eve. It says that he made man and female in that initial creation on day 5, I believe it was. And then
there's some external doctrine in Jewish sort of mysticism that involves that person was Lilith, and because she refused to submit to Adam, she was turned into a demon.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I was going to get to. She was turned into a succubus, to be exact. But that's not in Christian doctrine. I'm like I said, I haven't actually read chapter 2 yet.
I keep turning my camera off because I'm eating. So like I don't want y'all to see me like stuffing my face on camera.
People got to eat.
I haven't read chapter 2 yet, but I did promise that I will, we'll see this remedy, and that remedy for whatever situation was with that first woman that was created with Adam, that there was some kind of problem, and Eve was the resolution of that problem. So, very at the very utmost beginning stages of the Garden of Eden, to me, there's a very serious question: is what happened to that first woman? Was she blinked out of existence? Did she disobey God initially, like immediately? It doesn't talk about that. We're left with a lot of questions, and when you have questions, you can't have divine doctrine, in my opinion. So let's get beyond that. Do you believe that the serpent was a serpent? I think you might have talked about it, but I didn't quite catch it. Do you think the serpent was an actual serpent or the representation of something?
I think it represents. I think all of the Bible represents things that are important. And the historicity, even if it were true, would be pretty darn irrelevant. And if it's just a history book, it's a bad one. Throw it away.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly. Like, I don't think that, for one, I think science, I can't remember the field and the numbers. I don't have the data. I have notes somewhere that the science has pretty much proven that there's no real way possible that we came from like two human beings. So if Adam and Eve might be a representation of the original tribe, maybe, I don't know.
So there's actually, I don't know if this is still current science, but there's a really interesting book, The Seven Daughters of Eve. All of human mitochondrial DNA, which is separate from from nuclear DNA, in that only women can pass down mitochondrial DNA. It's not found in the sperm and egg, like it's specifically, or it's not found in the sperm, it's only found in the egg. We can trace all of human mitochondrial DNA back to 7 women. So, yeah, that's the, like, that means, obviously, there was had to have been a much larger population of whatever, we evolved from that eventually became us. But currently all of those bloodlines have been wiped out except for 7, meaning that there had to have been a minimum of 7 women, that were Homo sapiens for all of humanity to exist right now, a minimum.
Right.
Well, yeah, and it's one of the things that I like about you, Richard, because I don't think you take it at literal. So when it says like a serpent, you don't necessarily read like a snake is talking. You're trying to decipher what the actual meaning of the text is.
You may not be aware of this, but snakes don't have flexible lips.
Yeah, they don't.
And weirder than that, they have a narrow tongue that goes into a separate slot in the back and the bottom of their throat. They can't like enunciate letters.
Yeah, they don't have
and
a voice
stranger
box.
still, they don't have a larynx.
I feel like Callan needs to just like mysteriously appear in our chat right now.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna
snake.
get the gremlins from Callan for talking bad about snakes. I'm not really talking bad about snakes. I'm talking bad about Satan. So.
Yeah, I actually think that it's not a topic of an actual serpent in the garden, but something that's observed from the garden in the first place. And that what's observed is actually what's now called, it's part of the Dark Horse Nebula. If you looked into that, you'll find a section of it that is called the Snake Nebula. Now the Snake Nebula, if you look at the cloud and the parts that are used up, there's a black part that's like used up and you can like see stars through it. So when you look at that, I think it takes very little or no imagination to first of all say, oh, it looks like a snake, because they even named it that. But I think it takes not much more imagination more than that to see the reverse spade tail on it and the reversed ears. So very much looks like a serpent in like the classical sense of what we would call a serpent. And I think that's the inspiration that's being spoken of in the story of the Garden of Eden, that men don't want to do anything but, like, I don't know, have some beer beside them while they paint on cave walls or something, I guess. And it's really women that do most of the motivation of men. So I think what the story is really about is a man becoming motivated by a woman's exploration and in that bravery is what I think it's actually talking about. That she was looking to the stars and pushing him toward the stars.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Adam and Eve story could be like a good origin story if you're like talking about ancient peoples trying to devise a way of like maybe how it started.
I think the Greek one's better personally.
I think that there was a lot of ones that were actually better, but but like if you're seeing it as a story, then it's just a good story, and you probably disagree with a lot of the things that I put in my video. But
Naka, it ain't a good story because the lesson behind it is women are evil and it's their fault that we're all miserable. So no, it's not a fucking good story. Don't lie, Naka.
It's not a good story, a fantastical story. Another fantastical story. That's a better description.
There's plenty of Jills out there to get that kind of a reading from, and I'm not saying Jills don't exist. They do.
I think
you got your Matt Powells and your Jills.
Well, unfortunately, if you look at the statistics, Richard, here in America, I think it's like 46% of America believes in the Genesis creation story as history, as what actually happened, how the world started. That's a very scary
Well, they
number.
won't forever.
Yeah, it's getting better.
Forever.
It's definitely getting better, I think.
So just because someone like a Matt Powell or a Jill will say, oh, women belong naked and pregnant in the kitchen and not in the workforce and not independent and empowered. Just because they'll say something like that and simultaneously say, I justify this using the text, doesn't mean that that is the intent of the text, but it does mean it's the intent of those persons.
I agree.
I don't think that that's necessarily the case, though, because God, like, in the story, goes off on Eve and basically says that it's her fault.
Well,
and that it's Adam's fault for listening to her.
I agree, like, in the context of certain texts.
Yes and no.
Like, when you're looking at the story overall as a whole, yeah, I think it's fairly undeniable that the Bible portrays women as the lesser, and it's dominant throughout. But, like, if you're looking at the story of Genesis in particular, I could see, having interpretations like they're primitive peoples. Richard is sitting here saying that he interprets it to where the women are actually the motivators of the tribe. To where, he's definitely not Jesus is Lord, or actually I can't even remember his answer because I was just angry during that whole conversation. But like a conventional Christian that would say, Eve was created with Adam's rib to be subservient to Adam and to be lesser than.
Well, let's say.
Can I address the chat really quick? Puff, what I said was specifically mitochondrial DNA. All mitochondrial DNA, according to a number of studies that I read, can be traced back to 7 women, like 7 common ancestors, quote unquote. Because only women can pass on mitochondrial DNA. That's all I was saying. I'm not saying that, like there was only 7 women at a creation or something like that. I was saying that that's what the science currently points to, that of all of the bloodlines that have ever existed, those 7 bloodlines are the only ones that are left.
And then on top of that, we see bottlenecks of about 5 to 10,000 in at least 3 different areas. So you see those bottlenecks, and then behind that, you see 7, and everyone who wasn't related to those 7, by coincidence, have died off. There could have been 30,000, and those 7 were part of 30,000 women. That would have been fine. But it just so happens that only the mitochondrial DNA from those 7 have survived. Is that accurate, Allie?
Allie's usually right.
Whoops, I was muted. Yes, that is accurate. Well, I mean, there have been population bottlenecks in a number of places. There appeared to be a major semi-extinction event in Africa at one point. There was another one. There was the European bottleneck. Like the entirety, I get into fights with race realists a lot on the lefty side of my stuff. The continent of Africa actually has a larger genetic diversity than all of Europe, Asia, North and South America combined. because one of those population bottlenecks was the exodus from Africa. There was a limited number of people that made that trip and stayed initially, and that, like, everybody that has been born in those continents since then, for the most part, apart from, obviously, like, other migrants that made the trip later down the line, the vast majority of those people came from that initial migration.
Yeah, one of the more interesting bottlenecks I've ever researched was the ones of how the Native Americans came to America. Very fascinating research, a lot of very interesting theories, and people still trying to find the truth. But very interesting. Look into it. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I did do work on it way back in the day. Can't remember the name of the theory, but really interesting bottleneck if you get into that kind of thing.
Okay, so Christians will normally say things like Eve is supposed to be below man, and they'll normally say things like it's easy to find within the text where women are supposed to be oppressed, and that is appropriate according to Christian doctrine. And I can never argue that that isn't Christian doctrine. It obviously is. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the text is talking about. It's just a popular view of it. For instance, what if I'd said, what if the text read something like Adam existed and then Eve was taken from the crown of his head? Well, then some people would say, oh, that means she's higher. But what if it had read, oh, it's taken from his ankle or from his foot, and that a bone was taken out of his foot to make Eve? Well, then people would definitely say, oh, well, that's showing she's lower. When it says rib, that to me that means side by side, inequality is what that would more represent, which I think is a healthier view of the text than I normally get to hear Christians say.
Well, I think that the argument isn't necessarily that how can I say this? The argument isn't necessarily that the text couldn't be potentially interpreted differently. The argument is that, like, for example, in the New Testament, it flat out says women submit to your husbands in all things. There are other passages in the Bible, all throughout the Bible, outside of even just the Genesis stories, that repeatedly say a woman is to serve her husband, a woman is to be unto a servant, etc., etc. I can find quote after quote for you if you want. That's not just an interpretation. Those are literal word-for-word quotes from the text.
There's still an issue that Christians, I think, are normally missing about that it's describing a certain time frame, and a very specific time frame, and it's not supposed to be carried outside of the time frame.
Well, and to that, I completely agree with you that it was describing the culture of the time. But at the same time, Christians are arguing, that these words are infallible and that they have created due to the divine inspiration, they have created an inalienable set of absolute, natural moral law that comes from a divine source and therefore cannot be argued with because the laws and words are perfect. And from that point of view, seeing those direct exact quotes, there's no way to misinterpret what those direct exact quotes mean if you're taking it from that paradigm. I understand that is not your paradigm, but that is the paradigm of the person you're talking to, and in order to have a conversation, you kind of have to understand those paradigms.
Well, yeah? I think that's why, it's important to talk to Richard and people like Richard that have alternative views of the Bible. Because, I'll sit here and I'll tell you straight up, I think the Bible is shit. I'm going to go through it chapter by chapter. I'm going to name each and every chapter. This chapter is stupid.
There's some gnarly stuff in the Bible, yeah. Though. There's some really interesting stories in there.
Well, I'll have fun with them. But I think it's super important that different interpretations of this book do get out there. And that's one thing that I do appreciate about Richard. Now, we don't agree on hardly anything when it comes to this shit. But there's, for one, I talk about dangerous beliefs all the time. Somehow Christianity hasn't affected Richard like that. So it's a good evidence of that. So sometimes it's really hard to argue with Richard about it because, it's more just fun banter than argument because if it's all real, I would much prefer Richard's version than your conventional Christian. And I think it's super important that we get Richard's version out there because, it's better. It's definitely better than, the woman's your slave, do what you want,
Yeah, I don't think that's what the text is about. When we say people will refer to the text, and I have to ask the question: wouldn't they just be like that anyway? And and they would just say those things. They would feel that way anyway. They're just willing to say it louder because they think the Bible backs them up.
Oh, I totally
But
agree.
in reality, we know that those sorts of ideas destroy societies. We know that.
If you read that book and you agree with this part of that book, or you try to justify it, then yeah, deep down inside, you agree with that. And I don't think you can really run away from that. And I think that's why, people try to apologize for the Bible a lot, or they try to justify, well, we don't do that now, well, no, but
okay.
You say that the Bible applies now, so it's possible that we could start doing that again now.
But do they eat bacon? Do they wash their hands 5 times a day? Do they pray toward do they follow all the rules, or just the ones they
with
want?
The Ebola virus, or not the Ebola virus, with the coronavirus floating around. Wash your hands 10 times a day, please.
Yeah.
And but they don't and you know what? Like, brush your teeth and fucking use some mouthwash too, just in case.
That wouldn't hurt anything. Yeah, they don't actually do that stuff. They just say, that I like these particular things. I'm going to talk about these particular things. I'm going to ignore the rest, and that's going to justify how I would be anyway.
Well, I think what the struggle is here, though, is that those views, like a lot of those particular people, like, let's go ahead and say that we're dealing with a Christian who does not literalize the Old Testament. In fact, we're dealing with one of the ones that believes that, Jesus, when he said, I have not come to abolish the old laws, but to fulfill them.
To fulfill it.
Right. That fulfillment still abolished the old laws somehow, because they actually believe Paul, when Paul said, he has freed us. Like, let's say we're dealing with one of those, right? Okay, so they're a Paul worshiper, so to speak. They're a follower of Paul.
Sure.
They believe that only what's codified in the New Testament is considered to be law. What's codified in the New Testament is the same laws of submission. So, like, the message of almost the entire document contains this anti-woman narrative.
Can we put it in time frame? No, I want to get back to the serpent.
Well, I did actually pull up the quote from Genesis 3, because you said that God does not blame the woman, but it's clear that he does.
Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a piece, I'm just going to read from verse 10, so Genesis 3:10 down. Or actually, Genesis 3:9. But the Lord God called to man, where are you? This is the New International Version, by the way.
Right.
He answered, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. And he said, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat from? The man said, the woman you put here with me, she gave me some of the fruit of the tree, I ate it. And the Lord God said to woman, what is it that you have done? The woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. So, in 14, God punishes the serpent, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offsprings and his, blah, 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 all that. To the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor, you will give birth to children. There. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And to Adam he says, because you listened to your wife, and ate fruit from the tree which I commanded you. You must not eat from it. And then the whole cursing thing. Adam named his wife Eve because she would become the mother of all living. And then there's all the stuff about being clothed. But the point is, like, over and over, it is emphasized by that story, not just explicit, but emphasized by that story, that this is the woman's fault. And that, and he outright says, you will be subservient to him. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. So in that, exactly, she is effectively called a servant. He will rule over you. He will dominate you. Would
you describe to me how a woman can be pregnant and desiring her husband? I mean, doesn't that mean she had him?
Well, I hate to say this, hon, but there are lots of people with pregnancy fetishes that there's this particular span of time during pregnancy where you still have sexual desire.
I didn't say they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
What I said was that obviously she had her husband. But desire would indicate not having.
Well, I mean, like, you can want something that you're not currently engaging in.
Right. That's when you want something, is when, because if you have it, it's in your hand. You have it. You're not desiring it, you're having it.
I believe desire in this case is a Hebrew word that basically means lust.
Yes, that's fine.
So, like, I mean, I'm dating 2 dudes. If I want to sleep with one of them, I can want them right now and not be able to because I'm on a stream.
Yeah. Okay, so that agrees with what I'm saying. You desire when you don't have. You don't desire when you're having, you're busy having.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's having her births greatly multiplied in sorrow, desiring her husband. In other words, he's not getting her pregnant.
I don't understand where this argument is coming from in terms of how these words are defined.
Okay, if there's prophetic value, if the Bible is not historically valuable but could be prophetically valuable, what if the overview in Garden of Eden is actually talking about people ascending into heaven and what Adam and Eve will do when they're out of the garden or earth, out of the earth? So I'll give example. If what we're doing right now for work is just slavery to other people, and that's how it reads in the Bible, although, get along with your slave master, don't get yourself in trouble all the time, follow the laws of the land, etc. Don't get yourself in a bad way. But what we're doing is not useful and progressive according to the Bible. But what we would do in heaven might be. Okay, so Adam leaving out of the Garden of Eden has to get a real job. No longer can he just lay around. The ground's going to produce for him. It's not going to be like that anymore. And Eve has her births greatly multiplied in sorrow. That is, if you give birth to a baby, it hurts. Okay? But to have them greatly multiplied when she hadn't had a child yet makes no sense. So when the Christians say, oh, she's going to have painful childbirth increased, well, then she had to have at least one before that. And in the story, she hadn't had one. So that comparative makes no sense when there's nothing to compare it to. So what I'm saying is that women have babies right now, and that's uncomfortable to the 9th degree, something I can't really understand, but I've seen people do it. That what it's talking about is having a woman's births greatly multiplied in some future time. It's not talking about Eve, who didn't even have a kid yet, having her births multiplied. Because zero times infinity is what? It's zero. You can multiply none by whatever you want. You still got none. So she had to have had at least one for the Christian doctrinal view of the text to make sense. She hadn't.
Well, I think I completely agree that the Bible doesn't make much sense. The problem is, though, that it says the thing and people put stock in it. So
sure,
I wish everybody didn't think that it meant pretty much what it says. That you have to really decipher deep meanings to get around it. But I think it clearly says that women are being dominated by husbands, and
yes,
if you put stock that this book is the infallible word of God, like most conventional Christians do, and you aren't one of those, then we do have a serious issue, and you see that really in the fundamental communities with the male patriarchy.
Sure, they're taking advantage of that. They feel justified.
Across the board, though, just in society in general, men feel superior to women, feel like, we can beat them, we can use our physical strength against them, that we should make more money, that we should be this and that, and they should be this and that. And throughout the history of the world, until modern times, they've pretty much had to go along with it. So I think we do have an issue that this Bible says this thing. I wish people didn't take it so fucking seriously, but I agree, it doesn't make any fucking sense.
When I'm actually looking, though, into the etymology here, the word for desire that is used here in Hebrew is the same word that is actually used in the Cain and Abel story. It's the desire to sin, to go against the word of God. It's the desire to overpower another. When it said the desire came over him, it's the exact same word that was used when Cain struck his brother. So the idea is that you shall desire your husband. That is the desire to overpower the husband, but the curse is that he shall rule over her, that the prescriptive is that she shall be less than he is in this
you can't
culture.
Adopt the overall context from Cain and Abel and put it back into Adam because the word has the same definition.
It's the exact same word, though. There are multiple words for
I
desire,
understand it's the
and
same
this is
word.
the same word.
I understand it's the same word. It's not the same word following that word or before that word. And in fact, it's not the same overall context whatsoever, although the word is exactly the same. I'm sure you're right. But you can't carry the entire context of Cain and Abel into Adam and Eve because there's a word that's exactly the same. It doesn't work that way.
All right, so do you believe that, because I think you said something about it earlier, and we've been talking about a lot of stuff, but you said something like maybe Adam and Eve brought evil into the world. Do you think that evil was here before the fall, before they ate that fruit? Or was evil something that God created when He created the earth? I don't know what you believe about the creation. I don't think we've ever actually been there.
Well, first, I think what Allie said was factually correct and logically followed. That if someone is unknowledgeable, they can't be accountable. It doesn't even make sense, right? That's like saying, "Oh, Naka, I need you to fly the space shuttle next week," and you're just like, "I don't know how." I said, "Fine, you go to jail." It's just stupid. It makes no sense, you know? And Adam and Eve would have been in that position of innocence due to ignorance. Obviously, they didn't have the truth. They had not eaten of the fruit. They can't be blamed for it. So all of that view that Christians espouse about the story of Adam and Eve necessarily follows that God is a horrible monster playing a trick on them. Yeah, or that's not what the story's about. It's got to be one of the two. Either God's a horrible monster who fooled them. I mean, let's break it down, really. Okay, so He puts the tree in the Garden of Eden, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, tells them not to eat of it. If they haven't eaten of it, they are innocent. He tells them not to. Then they eat of it, which He must have known they were going to do, which means He set them up. Right?
Yeah, well, and then if you believe He's an omniscient God, then He must have known they were going to eat it, even as He told them not to.
Well, shoot, I mean, you don't have to be about 50 years more experience than someone else to know that they were going to do it. Like a child is going to touch the stove. You know that.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, like, I can tell my daughter not to eat that. The moment that I'm not paying attention, she's going to eat it.
And that's
I'll
fine.
put it to you this way. If God didn't want them to do it, He wouldn't have made them capable of it.
Yes,
and
exactly.
He wouldn't have put it there
it's
to
like
tempt
a computer programmer. If you don't want your program to do something, then you don't give your program the capacity to do that thing.
Well, yeah, and that's always been my
Hitchens,
interpretation. Like, wwhy is eating of the fruit such a sin? Because Christians say, like, for one, like, they glorify Adam as the first man, as this perfect human, right? But then in the next breath, they'll curse him for all he is because he brought sin into this world. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
and I'm
so
like,
very
for one,
inconsistent.
like, you know, God created everything. So, literally everything they say about this story doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
That's right.
And it just baffles the mind. That's why, like, it's going to be so easy, like, at the beginning of all this shit, just to have a field day with the Bible, because, like, I am going at the consistent view. Like, what do most people like? I don't want to center it just right around like the Hovind thing, like I did in chapter 1. I just saw the word kind, and you kind of have to, right? So, but you know, I want to center it more around the consistent 46% of Americans actually believe this is the creation story. Let's point out why it's silly, and then we'll go on beyond there. We was joking before the stream that I have like content for years now because it's going to take forever to go through the whole fucking Bible.
So, Richard, by the way, I did go digging a little more, and there's 5 different interpretations that are kind of put forward as for that word. The word is teshukah, or teshuka. To run after, to desire, to long for a thing, to be overcome by desire for a thing. Right. And there's a number of different interpretations for that, but all of them basically coincide to the woman's longing for, intimacy and marriage are tied to the fact that she's going to have to get rid of her sense of self because he rules her, etc. As much as she longs to connect
that's a huge
truly
extrapolation you just made.
This is what scholars are saying. This is what papers are saying. These are all of these interpretations basically state that there is no ambiguity there, that a woman, her desire is to be thwarted by the fact that her husband is to control her.
I already agreed that the Christian consensus scholarship included in that, and theologians alike would agree with you. I totally agree. But that is not necessarily how it has to be read, and it's self-conflicting, and it's not true to reality, and it's misogynistic. I mean, there's everything wrong with it. Everything.
Well, you want to know something interesting, though? When I was digging through looking for, like, sort of etymological interpretations, I came across an article written by a Jewish rabbi, and they stated that in their particular denomination of Judaism, they actually see this as an emancipation for mankind, where before Adam and Eve were operating effectively like automatons, and now they have the ability to direct themselves and choose their own path to salvation rather than being eternal and unable to conflict with God's will.
Yeah, that kind of lends toward the serpent was right, the snake was right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's almost like the serpent is a Prometheus type figure that gifted mankind with the ability to choose.
Yeah, with that view. Unfortunately, it has nothing to do with what the story's about. It only has to do with Christian and traditional doctrine.
Well, that was from the Jewish perspective, from a particular rabbi who wrote this article. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I never got a response from Brett after the whole Friday thing when he got mad at me for not being in the stream, and I messaged him when I got home like, dude, I'm working. You know, I wasn't ignoring you. I was at work. No message since then. He just sent me a link to join a stream. I'm like, dude,
I'm streaming. What the fuck?
And then after I stream, I gotta go to bed because I have a daughter that has to go to school in the morning. So yay.
So Maynard Saves says, why has no scholar taken the view that you are currently putting forward, if it's possible that it is a view?
Since 2012, and it hasn't even been proven yet. So nobody's adopting this.
Okay. So my question is, you talked about like the Snake Nebula.
Yes.
That's obviously a name that probably came from Greek. Like in terms of where the naming of the constellations, since most constellations it's either Greek or Latin.
It's not a constellation; it's a nebula, as I said.
Okay. Well, was that nebula named in some way after a snake during the time that the Bible was written?
It was discovered in 2001.
Okay. How could
Hubble.
the Bible possibly contain anything about that if it wasn't known?
Yeah, glad you noticed that. I think it's not the written word of man, for one thing. It's written from an out of earth perspective for another, and this is just one of those examples of an off of the earth perspective.
Yeah, but the thing is, from an off of earth perspective, would that nebula resemble a snake?
Sure. If you could see it from this planet, it looks like a snake, and
But wouldn't
it's
a
talking
creature from off of this earth refer to it by the colloquial name from their own, from their own culture?
What makes you... Never mind. Okay, I don't see any reason why our culture, our collective cultures aren't their culture. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, so are you claiming...
Let me just ask
what
you...
is the claim that you're making here? Like, are you claiming that there is an otherworldly visitor that came and gave this information to us, or...
By necessity.
Okay, well, if that's the case, again, why would that otherworldly visitor, if they came from a different planet, why would they not have called that nebula by a name that's from their planet rather than from ours?
What if you're speaking their language right now?
Then that would be very strange, considering English as we're speaking it right now hasn't existed for very long.
I didn't mean it literally. I meant that as an example. You know what I'm saying, right? What if for instance, what if they actually speak Chinese and Hebrew and ancient Mesopotamian languages and et cetera, et cetera?
What if that's what they actually speak? You know, I think that's... We can relate it that way. Like, what if they? What if they're? I mean, what if humanity? What if what we are is what happens everywhere? You know, just to
that's a good example. That's a good example. I mean, why are we so proud of ourselves that we think we're all that special? I have no idea, other than just pride. And possibly like we're not special at all.
But I don't feel like you're answering my question. Like, that nebula would appear different from a different angle from a different planet. So why would they refer to it as a snake?
We'll go through it step by step. It's fine. Who has the book that we're referring to?
What do you mean, who has it?
We have the book, the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's in our hands, and we're reading it from this perspective. Why would they describe something we can't see?
Yeah, but this book has existed for thousands of years, and we couldn't see it for those thousands of years, so...
Right.
Why would that book have, and it's actually not even existed for thousands of years. This book has actually only existed for a few hundred years.
It only needs to be older than 2001 in this case.
But the point
Pretty
is,
sure it's older than
why would that be so deeply embedded, and why would it specifically be for something that is, named in English? Because that nebula has names
It got
in
translated
a bunch of different
into
languages.
it got translated into English. It used an ancient word that meant snake or serpent. It was the original word is not snake or serpent.
Okay, but the point being
We translated it.
Okay, but the point being that the, Snake Nebula was named by people later on in existence. Like, there's no way that those people would have known that they were going to name that nebula that.
Yeah, you're right.
We could have named it the Cow Nebula.
That's right.
So
No,
what exactly
from this
about that
perspective, it
proves
really
that
does look like a snake. It takes no imagination.
Yeah, but if if that nebula had not been discovered on this planet, again, how would they know that it would look like that from this planet?
They were here. It's part of the theory.
What, did they have telescope eyes? Like, this does not make sense.
I don't know why you keep insisting that they are ancient people that I'm talking about. That they had limited technology, limited to Iron Age and Bronze Age people. It's not what I'm saying at all.
So, why would there be no archaeological remnants of this advanced technology should these people have visited?
Arguably there is. Now, I don't refer to it, but I'm certain if you're able to make that statement with a straight face, then you obviously have not looked into that at all.
Well, I've read a lot of stories about ancient aliens, but there's also more debunks of those than there are any.
That's not the point. The point is that there is some reason that some people, and pretty good-sized groups sometimes, think that it's a plausible theory. There's reason for that. It's not because they're all insane.
I mean, there's a bunch of people that think the Earth is flat, but that doesn't make it true.
Yes. Anyway, if you're going to flat Earth me...
I find the ancient astronaut theory to be far better
I find
creation
it interesting,
story
but I'm curious what your
than
evidence
Christianity is. But like I picked up on it immediately. But I've had these conversations with Richard before, so I've just been kind of she's grilling you hard, Richard. I'm just been kind of staying out.
It's okay. I just want it to be reasonable and within what I'm talking about. That's all.
Yeah. But yeah, I got the whole ancient astronaut things. We're finally here. So do you subscribe to the ancient astronaut theory? Like, what's his name? Von Don.
Let me address what she was saying first, Knock. If you don't mind, can you hold on to that till I answer what she said? Allie, you asked me last, why do I think, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so here's why I think it's describing a nebula in outer space that human beings couldn't possibly have known about. And it has to be information that came from off of this planet because it was written down in a book at least 300 years ago, 400. Shoot, I think we could prove more than before the telescope by Galileo. I think we could prove that the New Testament is older than Galileo's telescope. And Galileo's telescope was not going to spot this anyway. No way. Okay.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It was like the Chinese or the Japanese were looking into space for quite a while.
Sure, but they didn't have the acuity of the Hubble telescope.
A long time ago, I studied that shit. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we weren't going to find this till we had Hubble. There was no way we were going to find this till Hubble. It's just too small. It's just. I mean, I don't mean too small. I mean, too far away.
Found a lot of stuff with Hubble. I mean, Hubble's really, I think, changed the whole parameters of how we see the universe.
Certainly true. Certainly true. Okay, so it is true that within any given story cannot be every fact in existence. You'll agree to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's enough facts that are in there that it has to be identifying that and nothing else, should that be sufficient also?
What do you mean?
Exactly. Okay, if I said something had two tires and a frame that held the two tires together, and there was an X or a cross-shaped piece going the opposite direction as the frame, and there were rubber handles on it, and on the two wheels were rubber. I mean, I can only be describing so many things. It's not a space shuttle. It's not a wheelbarrow. It's not a car. It's a motorcycle or a bicycle. Mm-hmm. Just 5 things is plenty.
Okay.
So
you're saying that, like, to reframe into something that's a little more comprehensive, you're stating that there's only so deep into description that any story can go, which as a writer I understand.
Sure, of course. I mean, you can't have a book that contains all knowledge. That's just ridiculous. Who picks it up? Who carries it? Who reads it?
I will jump in real quick and let you finish, Richard. I've always read the New Testament. I haven't really done it, or the Gospels of the New Testament to be specific. I haven't really done it with the Old Testament. But I think it does kind of read like a science fiction novel, kind of like an alien visitation story to me. And I pointed that out in conversations with Dr. Josh. He kind of laughed about it. But I mean, to me, I think that there are definite verses in there. You're like, what the fuck are they talking about? They're talking about UFOs.
So I'm going to tell you exactly what the phrasing says in the Curse of the Serpent. And I'm going to tell you exactly where the Snake Nebula is. And I don't have the Hubble telescope. I'm dependent on the shoulders of NASA to make these statements. Okay? So the Snake Nebula is about 20 degrees above the plane of the zodiac. Okay? And it is crawling. It doesn't have the appearance of legs in the shape that's used up. It just looks like a serpent. Okay? And it is above the Taurus constellation within the zodiac. It's within the 30 degrees of Taurus. And nebulas are made out of dust and gas. And all that is absolutely factually true. And it's really, really, really far from here. That is, I could say it this way. Because you have done this, on your belly you will crawl all the days of your life, eating dust. Thou shalt have great enmity between you, your seed, and the seed of Eve. You will be cursed above the cattle and all the beasts of the field. That's the zodiac. And then the final line. So
the vast majority of the zodiac, though, isn't the beasts of the field. A lot of them are humans.
I don't know why you'd say that. There's only one human figure in the zodiac.
Aquarius, Gemini.
Okay.
Virgo.
Okay, you can call those human figures. Okay, I'll go that far.
Yeah, because Virgo is the virgin. Gemini are
Virgo's about the sheaves of wheat, not about the virgin. But anyway, it tells what sign. And if in the zodiac are animals, you'll agree to that. That there are beasts of the field. There is a field of beasts. Unless you want to say that humans, those three positions, are not animals. In fact, you're going to have a hard time finding something that's not an animal in the zodiac. I think there's, one.
Isn't that taking a very Western view, though? Because there are multiple zodiacs that exist within different cultures, and many of them are actually very different sets of constellations. In fact,
I understand.
Like, the constellations that you're describing are only viewable from certain areas within certain hemispheres. So the idea of describing things in this way, like you're only describing them from a particular point on, on the planet. So that would be a very limited way to describe that sort of thing. If you're trying to reference it for the future, you'd have to be describing it to a very specific culture that would be looking from a very specific place if that's what it's supposed to be useful.
These are the reasons I think God is smart.
All right, so I think I've asked you this before. What is God to you, Richard? Like, is he the 3-O God of the conventional Christian? Is he an alien being? Is he a biological being? I think I've asked you this before. I can't quite remember how you answered. I think you answered something like in the middle.
That was a pretty good video you did on that. The ooh God, you cracked me up, man. I laughed every time you did that.
I mean, I did a lot of research and saw philosophers talking about the problem of evil. So I can't say that I made that up. I ganked it.
It's pretty good though. Anyway, you played it well.
Thank you.
I think, although I don't understand, I'm not a philosopher. I can't say that I really understand all the intricacies about why an omniscient, omnipresent, omnibenevolent, and omnipower, omnipotent. So it's actually 4 O's that a lot of Christians claim.
Yeah.
I don't understand all the reasons, although when I heard the arguments, it sounds reasonable to me that some of that is contradictory, that some of that, you couldn't be both of those things in some of those cases. Okay? And I don't really get the argument. I haven't looked that deep into it.
You can't,
but
be
I
those
never
things
believed it anyway.
In the reality of the existence that we observe as human beings here. I'll put it that way. Maybe you could be those things in a different reality, but again, that reality couldn't possibly affect our own. So I
Right.
think that the problem continues.
So I think the overall problem is the same problem I keep talking about. That is the problem, and it's Christian doctrinal view of the text, not the text. Okay,
and
so
putting their own shit into it, because I don't recall it
plenty.
saying in the Bible that God is these things. They translate it into saying this.
Find me the line that says God's outside of space-time. Find me that line in the Bible.
Exactly.
There's no such line. And
So
it doesn't even indicate it.
So do you
look into?
Do you think he's a god, or is he a biological creature? Maybe an immortal creature that comes here from space and then has. I mean, we're seeing you draw. Sorry to cut you off, Ali. I didn't do that intentionally. We're seeing your drawing is really cool. I like how you're doing that now, having the drawing going on and behind you. But that drawing is basically representing revelations, and you think that they're coming from space, right?
Yeah, they literally say they come from the quote-unquote lowercase heavens or sky, come from the sky. In fact, we point up in reference to God, and we like everybody does. Okay, but more to your question, more to your point. What I see claimed in all spiritual stories throughout the world, including the Bible, is that God was born part of a slave race. But because he was so much different than mom and dad, he was too different. Like, she could carry this child and give birth to this child, but this was not the same animal she was. Okay? So, the first of a new species, a brand new species. And then there's always the story of them killing off all the rest except one. That's also always part of the story. And then the king of the land always takes that one, maybe like as a pet or something at first. But he goes ahead and nourishes it and raises it up. But it ends up that he like gains respect for it, which is a really weird situation. But he gains respect for it. And that's why you have Moses becoming a tax collector and stuff, and he's in charge of huge amounts of not only Hebrew, not only Jews, but also he's in charge of a lot of the stuck on a word, Egyptians.
But like Moses wasn't a different species, though. He was just a different race.
Yes, this is a context that is different. I agree. So all of the stories tell of God being born into a slave class and given freedom because he's just not a slave class thing.
But Moses wasn't supposed to be God, though. That's the problem. Like, the only person that you could argue is anything close to God in the Bible would be Jesus. Like, Moses was a servant of God.
That's the only one? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, because God himself does act directly through all of the Old Testament. It's very clear that he has acted all throughout, and at no point is the comparison drawn between God and Moses. Moses is repeatedly told to humble himself and obey God.
Yeah,
at no point does it say Moses is God.
So maybe Jesus, but definitely nobody else. You're willing to stay to that statement? You're going to plant your flag on that?
Yeah.
Okay, let me destroy that flag. If I said that someone was abiding the highest forever, having no mother, no father, was the king of peace and the king of righteousness, who would that be? Having no mother, no father, no lineage, the king of peace, the king of righteousness, abiding forever. Who's that?
I would say
That's
nobody.
Supposed to be Jehovah.
That would be God. Yeah. The name is Melchizedek. The story of Melchizedek is another story of God, by definition.
I'm unfamiliar with that one. I'll admit. I'm in the dark.
I'm actually playing your show on my show.
Yeah, I see that. It's pretty cool. I like it.
Sorry about that.
I'm in the dark there. So, I'm not sure. I don't think I've gotten an answer to... so what is God? Is God an immortal being? Is he does he exist out of space and time? I don't think you think that because you kind of mocked it.
I'd like to differentiate between immortal and eternal. Immortal would mean it can't be killed. Eternal would mean it doesn't die of diseases in old age.
Yeah. All right. So is it a biological? That would like, if you think that it's eternal, that would
Right.
imply to me a biological creature, right? Like
Yes,
a flesh
absolutely.
and blood.
Yes, just like us. That is, I tell you now that ye are gods. Talking to people.
I would agree that I take it that Jesus was trying to say that we're all the Son of God, that he wasn't trying
Right.
to actually claim that he was the Son of God. But I have a different interpretation of the Gospels than most people. But I mean, I was starting to look at that as I was already out of Christianity. I was into other religions when I started to look at the Gospels, and I'm like, I don't really think Jesus has ever really claimed to be the Son of God until he was under forced arrest from the Romans. All up until that point, he's called himself the Son of Man, and I think a couple times actually pointed at others and said, "You're the Son of God." But I could be wrong about that. It's been a while since I read the Gospels.
The only difference would be whether or not the word "the" in the phrase should be capitalized or should not. The Son of God, meaning fulfilling a specific role that's predestined from the beginning of the earth, the Son of God. And then everyone are daughter and sons of God. Everybody.
Well, I mean, it speaks of the sons of God in the Old Testament. I'll be getting there fairly soon, I think, when you talk about the Nephilim and
Exactly.
Angels
Okay,
on the earth
so-
that were called the sons of God. So, I mean, I think that the Son of God, I don't really even get in the Old Testament where there's this prophecy that this God, I think the Jewish people would tell you that the prophecy never spoke of somebody like Jesus or a son of God, but that's a Christian thing, and Christians interpret it that way.
Yeah, they were
So-
looking more for a warrior hero.
As far as your description of Melchizedek, that's how he's described in the Bible, but according to what I'm reading here, the segment of the Bible appears to be derivative of the Tel El Amarna letters, which were letters that were written between two kings, and the specific reference was that he did not get the appointment as high priest because of his lineage, which is the context in the Tel El Amarna letters referring to the same person. I did not get here because of a father or a mother, but because, but through my own effort is the context of that, and the Bible verse is a shorter version of it.
Well, that certainly could be true, and that would justify it.
So let me
That
ask
way
you
Christians
this.
can keep their Christianity.
You
But
stated
I'm
here
going-
that... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Richard. I don't mean to cut you off.
Okay, if it's written by mankind and not at least inspired by God, throw it away.
Right. So you think that God is eternal, not immortal. So
Yes.
do you think God has died?
I think the first of the fully evolved human beings has ever died. No.
So that original God figure is still alive. He has the capability of dying. Somebody or something could kill it, but it's still alive and it's still running the universe. Do you think it runs the universe?
Oh, no, just our kind. Just this kind of animal and Earth planets. That's it.
Interesting. I wish we weren't doing an interview stream with Digital Hammurabi, and I'd bring them on. Have you talked to Dr. Josh and Megan about some of these things?
I think Megan's not really into this conversation. I respect her for that. That's not her thing.
She debunked the ancient astronauts and took some shit for it from YouTube, I believe. And
True
yes,
story,
I don't think
they
she likes
did,
to
yeah.
talk about it anymore.
I think, I don't know. It's treading on something a little bit too personal, and it's not professional. Okay?
So, like, do you subscribe to the ancient astronaut theory that's put forth out there, or do you have a different, like, you don't think it, like, the ancient astronaut theories, they don't think that they're like human beings coming here. They think that they're a race of aliens that came here to pretty much guided humanity at certain times, if I'm having it right. I used to get into it.
Well,
I actually read
it depends
Chariots
on
of the
which
Gods
one you're going to
several
refer to.
times.
If you're going to say Sitchin, it's about gold mining and improving apes. There's a wide variety,
I've
just like
heard
anything else.
some of the ancient astronaut theory that claims that Bigfoot was an alien race that has the ability to jump from one planet to the next, basically. I've heard some crazy shit.
I've heard some stuff too. Look, I think what's being described in spiritualities, and I mean universally, all of them that are ancient, that believe that there are levels of gods, and there's some highest god somewhere at some point somehow, whether that's their choice of deity or some other within those echelons, but believe in that system, like going back to Brahma, anything like that. That they're all saying the same thing. That what we're seeing here is terraforming using materials, animals, and plants that are actually extremely ancient. They're only new here, and the bottlenecks are here, and we can track the bottlenecks that we see here. So essentially, terraforming and guided purposeful panspermia is what I think they're describing.
Have you ever read the Ancestor's Tale or any books on genetics of those, like, of that ilk?
I'm afraid I haven't, Allie. I'm not very educated. I've only been at this for 8 years, and no.
I highly suggest taking a look at it. It's not the best book ever written on it, but it's one of the most readable, I think, because it models itself after the Ancestor's Tale, or after the Canterbury Tales, rather. And it goes back from human genetic code all the way, through some of our closer ancestors, people, like species that we share most of our DNA with, Ooh. And goes deeper and deeper and deeper back until we get to the, basically single-celled organisms that, share the oldest parts of our DNA. And it showcases how we definitely evolved from single-celled organisms.
Yeah, the single-celled organism that's our most recent single-celled organism ancestor its name means wrinkle-bag circle mouth. It doesn't have eyes or a spine. It's off topic. Never mind.
Well, I mean, a single cell would only be a single cell. It wouldn't have any of those things.
What's a Warna-Wild? I mean, are you going to make that as a universal statement, or are you talking about the Zacharias thing?
What do you mean?
Warna-Wilds have eyeballs. They're single-celled animals.
Okay, but no single-celled animal has a spine.
Well, I understand that. But it has an eyeball that has a cornea and a lens, and it's, water-filled. There's nerves for sensing light, It's a one-celled animal.
What was the name? Can you spell the name of that in the private chat really quick so I can look it up?
Well, it's not an unusual spelling, actually. It sounds funny the first time you hear it. It's just the word wild, like wild animal. Like a warning, there's a wild animal. Warn-o-wild. That's it.
Nothing is coming up.
It's not the scientific name, of course. That's a common name.
Only in these conversations with Richard, man. I have no idea. I'm like lost. This is great.
Yeah, it's the simplest animal with an eye. By a lot. By a lot.
What I'm really interested, because I love having this talk. Like, this is the first time for Allie, so this is all new for her. But me and you, we've had these conversations for just about a year now, so I'm quite familiar.
Yeah, you've been so patient with me, bro. Thank you.
I have a lot of fun because you have a very different interpretation of what the Bible says. I didn't even prepare Allie for it. I don't even know if she was ready for it because I just stay quiet. I'm like, we're just gonna have a chill conversation, But I always have so much fun. But what I'm interested in, because you have a lot of conversations with conventional Christians on your channel.
Sure I do.
I've watched a couple of them, or at least parts of a couple of them.
Jeez, Knock, why would you watch that?
Because it's good shit. And like, what is their reaction
Terrible.
to you, man? Like, what is their reaction to your different interpretations? Like, do they give you much shit? They have to give you much shit, like a lot of shit. Maybe not live, but they had to give you some shit, I'm sure.
They don't usually hold back, from what I can understand. They go ahead and say it live. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. I'll call myself a heretic according to doctrine. I'm a huge heretic.
So looking at the Warna-Weed, which it was WIID.
Sorry.
Like, what exactly were you trying to make a claim about that with? Like, a single-celled organism that has an eye, that counts as a transitional eye state, technically, for the purposes of talking about evolution.
I just said it was the first eyeball, the simplest animal with an eyeball, which is not our ancestor. That was my point.
Okay, well, there are lots of creatures that exist that have things that we do that are not our ancestors. Like, we still share a common ancestor with them somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean that original pond scum. Sorry, I had
Yeah,
to,
I don't make the pond scum to people
I had
argument.
to.
I don't.
Terrible.
Terrible.
I get it a lot. People like to throw that at me like I'm
I
some
mean, we share a
evolutionist.
percentage. We share a fairly large percentage of our DNA with cows. We share a fairly large percent of our DNA with fish.
You're gonna push me into objecting, aren't you? I've been trying to let that go for about 3 minutes now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you made
Ellie,
the
don't
claim
let you
earlier
go.
about like guided panspermia, so I'm kind of curious what exactly that means in the context of the work that has been done.
Let's talk about claims that were made. Let's talk about claims like the greater percentage of our DNA, stop me when I misquote you, is shared with apes. Is that something that you'd said, or is that an accident, or?
A large percentage of our DNA is shared with apes.
What's a large percentage mean?
95% is shared with chimpanzees.
Okay. Now, when you say that, what was tested?
What do you mean?
Of the genome of those two creatures that you're making a comparison of, what was tested?
Like markers all along the length of DNA. Mostly the useless DNA that isn't as activated in certain things.
Wrong. Protein coding. That test was based on protein coding alone. What percentage of an animal's DNA protein codes?
I don't know why you're going on this particular path.
Because you made a statement that I disagree with, and I tried to let it go for about 3 minutes. You brought it back up 2 more times. If you want to stop now, we'll stop.
I don't understand what you mean by, the only parts are protein coding. When you replicate your DNA, that is how it is replicated, is through coding.
I did. That's cheating. I hope you know you're cheating. Because I know you're brilliant. So I think you know you're cheating. What I said was the DNA, when it creates, only a percentage of it codes for protein. Only protein coding DNA was subject to that test model. Do you know what percentage of DNA codes for proteins? I didn't ask if the Kinnison walking motor was made out of protein. That's not what I asked. I didn't ask if there's what the DNA is made of. That's not what I asked.
The answer is 1%, but that's not the only.
Okay, so
DNA
what is
tested.
97% of 1%? Is it the greater portion? Is it over half even? Or is it about 0.97? Okay, so we're 0.97 similar. Congratulations, you're just the same.
For one, I don't quite understand the science, but I don't think that the science agrees.
Okay, but that's not because they
they
sequenced the entire human genome, and they've sequenced the majority of the chimpanzee genome, and sequencing the entirety of the genome, we share. I was actually wrong. We share 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees.
Okay, if you're referring to the 15, 20-year-old study, well, it's at least 10 years old, I know, that says that humans and chimpanzees are 97% similar, or 97.5, whichever number people are popular with. I don't care. I'm not trying to quote that number.
I'm sure that there's been
that was based
studies.
only on protein coding, and the estimate of the time is that 3% of the human DNA is protein coding, and that animal's DNA is protein coding. So if you want to say 97% similar of up to 5%, I'm fine with that. Just don't claim to me that's half. It's nothing close to half.
I'll have to look into that. I'll do a video on it. But
this is where I wish
think the
Dragnot was
science
hanging around,
says
because
that.
I feel like he'd be able to step in here a little harder than I can.
Who?
I'm just saying what the test was based on, and it's misquoted. It shouldn't be misquoted. The test was valid. The test was excellent test. Let's not misquote it,
Well,
though.
I'm sure that there's been several tests. You're talking about a test 10, 15, 20 years ago.
I'm talking about the popular one that people keep quoting.
Well, I'm not sure about that. What I think that the popular scientific consensus is that we share a great similarity to chimpanzees. I actually heard the 99% thing, but
Right.
I haven't read any studies. I just think that that's what scientists are saying. So if you have an issue with one study, I would say that there's probably a whole field of science behind this, and you would have to look at the rest of them.
Sure, there's plenty.
Okay, but according to this, again, what I'm reading in this particular study is that each human cell contains roughly 3 billion base pairs. That's the entirety of the DNA sequence. Just 1.2% of that equals about 35 million differences in the way that chimpanzees and humans appear, function, etc. We share 98.8% of all of the rest of the 3 billion base pairs. So no, not just the parts that are responsible for gene encoding. Of all of the base pairs in the entirety of the human genome, if you were to wrap it around the Earth as many times as you had to stretch the thing out, 98.8% of those is shared between humans and chimpanzees.
So how many times have you read that survey?
I just read through that article again.
No, that's not what I asked you. I asked you how many times you've read that article about that survey or about that survey.
I've read it a couple times. I read it in college. I read
that
a
the
newer
one you were
version of it
referring
from
to?
2012. I
Is
read a
that
newer
the
version.
Is that the survey you were personally referring to when you made the statement?
I was referring to a specific study that was done, another study that was done in 2012 as well. That showcased that. It wasn't just the one 20 years ago that looked at the pair encoding that you're talking about.
Okay, then my objection doesn't apply to you.
After the human genome was sequenced, they looked at those base pairs.
Fair enough. My objection doesn't apply to you.
So some people simplify it to 99%, but according to the study that I was reading, it's 98.8 if you want to get super duper specific, and it's 98.8 of all of the entirety of the human genetic code is shared with chimpanzees.
Okay. If that's the one you're quoting, I'm fine.
So, given that, given that
the science is fairly damaging to any Christian worldview, and I think it would be somewhat damaging to your worldview, Richard, because you think that we came from the stars. I believe. I don't want to put words
No, it
in your
doesn't.
mouth.
Actually, the whole idea of evolution doesn't trouble me or conflict with the Bible in any way, in my view.
Well, I'm curious, though, because you said guided panspermia. What do you mean by guided panspermia? Do you believe that Ponscom, as Knock referred to it briefly, do you believe that was placed here and then aliens somehow, directed it to evolve the way that it was supposed to?
No, okay, I can understand saying it and asking the question. That makes sense to me. I think evolution happened. I think evolution did not happen here. I think that all of this, the evolution looks older than the species. To put it briefly.
Well, what do you mean?
I mean, the evolution looks older than the species itself that we find here.
I think I agree with that. I think that the one problem that I've found with evolution, and I'm no scientist, I just look at it researching to debate. I think the problem is it does seem to happen rather fast at points. There's points of it that progression seems to speed up, and then there's points where it seems to really, really slow down to a crawl.
Well, there's actually a theory around that. It's called punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah,
exactly.
I'm no scientist, so thank you, Alex.
Yes, Stephen Jay Gould's no idiot, and his crew were not stupid people. They were serious scientists trying to explain a problem where you have these huge apparent leaps in homology and by definition genetic information complexity. And by that I mean organization.
But the thing is, though, we've also proved that there have been at least 5 major extinction events where large percentage of the population, it makes sense that, the evolution, with that quote evolution, which evolution is kind of a silly thing to talk about. It's a difficult thing to talk about because evolution isn't something that has any particular direction as far as it's understood scientifically. It's just random genetic like mutations can either take or they don't, depending on how well the creatures that carry them survive, either better or worse than their contemporaries.
I don't pretend
and
to
the thing
understand
is, when a bunch of ecological niches open up all at once after something like a major extinction event, what follows is that more of those genetic quirks are more likely to take hold in more areas, even within individual species, because now there's less competition in those niches, so those species are now able to speciate further and take areas. So that sort of idea of punctuated equilibrium within that context makes perfect sense. I don't see how that would lead to any sort of
It doesn't for exactly the same reason. It does and it doesn't simultaneously for exactly the same reason. In order to have successful evolution, you need a large populace where a beneficial mutation can occur to be selected for. But you just said bottleneck and success.
Except that's not what I said.
How can anyone ever say bottleneck success?
I never said bottleneck. What I said was after elimination of those species, suddenly there's now ecological niches that have opened up, so those that remain in surviving populations can expand their ability to function.
So the worldwide catastrophic events just didn't affect certain animals like soft-bodied lizards.
All right, so I am way out of my league on this one.
Or rats.
How do you
Ancient
account?
Rats.
How do you account? All right, so I think that. All right, so I got to ask a question before I get there. Does God control the human universe, the Earth-like planets?
Control? What do you mean? You have to tell me what you mean by control.
Well, does he control it like in the traditional Christian sense, to where he's pretty much pulling the strings everywhere from one spot? Does he travel physically to places? In your picture in Revelations, you actually have him traveling physically here. So is he on a ship? Is he traveling around as he's controlling the Earth-like planets?
Literally was given the first spaceship, built the rest of them. That is, so he made heaven.
How do you explain the Fermi paradox then? Why don't we see this spaceship flying around?
I would say respect would create the Fermi paradox.
Well, I mean, the Fermi paradox is that, by the age of the universe and evolution, that there should be very advanced civilizations. It would take literally 1 billion years, and we're just talking about our solar system, right? Or our galaxy, not any other galaxy. We'll never see another.
Should have happened a couple times by now, right?
Yeah, a couple times. We should be seeing these alien races. I
agree.
In space, given the age of our galaxy. And they've had plenty of time to dominate at least enough of the galaxy to where we would recognize them with the technology that we have today, and yet we don't.
Let's say there were some 17-year-old boys hanging around with your daughter. What would you have to say about that?
I am very opinionated about that subject.
I know, but it is personal. So I'm not going to get nasty or anything. I'm just saying, as dad to a young prepubescent girl who has 17-year-old boys hanging around, what are you going to go tell those boys?
For my 10-year-old daughter, that I am going to probably cut off their nutsacks, and I say that metaphorically.
But let's say that you went to them and you said, okay, I don't care if you are teaching her how to play marbles. This is inappropriate because of the age difference, which is a function of learning.
It depends on the context. So if a 17-year-old is teaching my daughter how to read better, and it's, it depends on the context, I guess.
Fair enough. Okay, but you would definitely not let someone more experienced negatively affect your daughter while she's under your roof, under your watch.
No.
Okay, so what if that's what happened? That our first has a understood agreement with other firsts that they don't let their folks come to where we are. We're in a little closed, small backyard. Stay out of my kid's backyard.
Well, but even if that's were the case with the Fermi paradox, we have, you mentioned the Hubble telescope. We have the ability now to see into other galaxies, much less at least a sliver of our own, right? We can. I don't think we can see. We don't have a perspective of seeing our entire galaxy, but we see a sliver of it. And in that sliver, we see nothing. We see nothing flying around. We see no evidence of life out there. That's the Fermi paradox. Is we should, but we don't.
No, that's not the Fermi paradox. Not whether or not we can spot them. It's why don't they show up and contact us?
Well, it's why haven't we?
Right. We have got no proof.
Contact would mean like seeing, like having
Anything.
evidence that they're out there.
Yeah.
If our
First
technology
kind,
picked them
kind,
up,
third
then we
kind,
have
fourth
contacted, them.
Right on. I dig you. Okay, check this out. When we find exoplanets around other stars, how do we find those?
I believe the shadows, right? Like,
right,
from the light of the star.
That's correct. Okay, so what we need to find is a repeating pattern changing the amount of light coming off the star. Do you know how hard that is to find?
Oh, I'm sure you have to have a lot of education and
so
experience.
Let's say there was a rogue planet passing in front of stars, but let's say there was weird gravitation, and it was not just moving horizontally to our perspective through space, but it was also wobbling upward and downward. Do you think we'd ever find that thing?
I'm not sure.
It would probably take us forever. We'd have to pretty much find that by accident. It would have to happen in front of certain stars in a certain order, and we happened to be looking that way, and we saw this irregular pattern of a rogue planet traveling through space. What if someone intelligently steered the rogue planet? Could we ever find that if they didn't want us to?
Oh yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to do a follow-up video with all of the problems with the Fermi paradox, because I totally agree.
Yeah.
I think that there probably, and I've stated that publicly, I think that there probably is alien life out there, and very advanced civilizations far beyond our technology. I don't think that they can get here. I think that would be our difference in opinion. I think you would believe that at least that first God figure would have the ability to get here. He just doesn't because of this understanding, right?
That's fair.
The expansion of the universe would state that it would get harder and harder to reach another galaxy the longer it's been since the Big Bang occurred.
Sure.
Yeah,
so
I mean, all the research,
chance that happened at all. But the problem is even with that, we were far enough away, even during the early formation of the planet, that it would have been difficult, if not impossible, for an advanced alien species to exist and come here.
That's another part of the problem. Yeah.
Well, and that's the Fermi paradox actually covers that. I mean, if you really go into the math of the Fermi paradox, like, I am fascinated with it. I'm not going to fucking lie. It's fascinating stuff. Everybody should look into it. No civilization will ever get to another galaxy. It would literally take way too long. You would die in the middle of dead space. You would never fucking make it, right? Like, even Star Wars addresses it. I've talked about this a few times. Like, when you watch Star Wars, you think they're flying all over the universe. No, they're flying through one galaxy, a galaxy far, far away. One galaxy.
That's right. Yeah, if we tried to travel right now, not what we have in plans, but what we have in actuality in propulsion. The nearest habitable Earth-like planet that we can find, sat down with my baby sister with a calculator and looked at nasa.gov. At our best we can do right this minute is a 77,000 year distance. That's how long it take us to get there.
Yeah, I think, like, they mapped out the progression of a civilization and how long it would take to get to each stage that you would need to. It would literally take like 1 billion years. I believe the number was. I need to go watch my own video. I could be wrong, but I think it was like 1 billion years for a civilization such as our own to dominate a galaxy, and that means sucking the resources from every aspect of that galaxy. Like we're almost to the point to where we're sucking all the resources from our planet, which would put us to stage 1 civilization in the Fermi paradox. I mean, it's so fascinating, y'all. I can literally study that shit for hours.
Well,
and hours.
I think one of the difficulties, though, is that although our star and planet are not one of the oldest, the idea that a star and planet could have been around within this galaxy long enough for something to come here and populate it. Like, I could believe that a comet, for example, had a single-celled organism from somewhere
far
else
more believable.
that existed.
Yep.
But the idea of something consciously planting something here, it's extremely difficult to believe, given that the galaxy most of the stars and planets would have formed around the same time-ish, in terms of, like, the massive span of time that you're talking about. So the idea that that creature would have had to come from not only another galaxy, but another galaxy that was formed much, much, much earlier than ours, and still somehow land on this planet while it was in the habitable zone in between, you know, having enough oxygen to just barely support single cellular life of some kind, while still not being completely hospitable to that species existing there to plant this stuff. So
I'm thinking if you can cross a galaxy, you know how to test for those things. That's not the issue.
Yeah, well,
my problem is we can't even get to the point where crossing a galaxy would be possible. You know what I mean?
The way that we think of it right now.
Not right now. I do think that at some point we're going to figure it out. We do actually have ways, but it would literally be colony ships that you're sending out with giant solar wind sails, and the ships would have to be designed to be ever sustaining, and the colony would have to reproduce as you're traveling thousands of years to get to that destination. They have actually, I mean, this shit is fascinating. I study this shit all the time. This isn't conspiracy theory here. This is like actually what NASA's talking about, you know, and this is the next steps of what humanity should be doing instead of bickering and fighting these silly wars over the dwindling resources of this planet because we've tapped them all. We need to be figuring out how to get off the planet. Start getting the resources from the universe around us. In particular, you start with your solar system. You get to the next place, and we're starting to do that. We're on Mars right now. We are getting there. You know, I mean, it's fascinating shit, and I think that, you know, if we can survive what we do to this planet, we have a chance of actually at least dominating this solar system at one point.
Pretty good.
Long time from now. I hope science before I die just figures out how to freeze me, and then you can unfreeze me and turn me young again back when, you know, we have control of this shit.
Oh, well, then in that case, when heaven arrives, just say thank you, yes.
Or just put my brain in a robot. I'm good with that too.
Ah, that wouldn't be the same.
Hey, I'm still alive.
Yeah. Can't hug your daughter if you're a robot, though.
I don't know. It depends on how real of a robot you are.
I guess.
Well,
I mean, I love these conversations, Richard. I always have fun, man. You take it into places no Christian's going to do. Go ahead, Allie.
Knock, knock. We're kind of on a break. Emmett just sent me something absolutely gorgeous, and you should go check your Discord DMs.
All right, well, we're going to be winding down. It's almost 10 o'clock. Man,
You're gonna want to show this on stream. Like, not...
okay.
You're seriously going to want to show this. This is some gorgeousness.
In order to do that, I fuck up the whole shit.
No, I'll walk you through it. It's not that hard.
Well, no, I mean, if I try to get Discord up right now, then
just drag it over my face. But legitimately, you're gonna want to do this. It is fucking pretty.
All right. So let me think. Just a second. Give me 1 second, guys. Brief intro. Or brief interlude. We'll be right back. All right. Just a second. Ooh.
Hey, Allie, I do want to say thank you for being brilliant and patient with me to talk to me at all. I think is an honor and a humbling experience, and I appreciate you. I deeply do. Which doesn't mean I won't say things that I think are true.
Well, and, you know, that doesn't mean I won't challenge ideas that I think are not. And that's, like, I do it because I respect you.
That's good.
You know,
excellent. They should be challenged.
But, like, as far as I went and looked up the closest galaxy. Apparently the King is the
Alright, they still hear y'all. So I'm going to switch back to the live. Alright,
no
we're
problem.
back. We're back. Alright, so let me, that was, Gaelic Knox always be hooking me up. Like, you know, she gave, that screen we just flashed to, that Gaelic Knox drew that shit. Allie's exactly right. This is brilliant. Thank you so much, Gaelic. Let me,
I missed it. Put it back up.
Well, I haven't put it up yet.
Looking.
You'll see it in 30 seconds after I do. I'm getting it up now. So let me.
I told you were gonna want to go to your DMs right the fuck now. Like this is not worth waiting. This is worth taking a break and looking at.
Yeah, this is sweet. This will go on. So this is gonna be going on some shit too. All right, so I'm getting it down to size, y'all. All right, here we go.
I almost feel like that would be a better waiting screen. Like that's boss.
Yeah, I think we definitely have a second waiting screen now.
That is absolutely friggin' gorgeous. Like, you're trying to resize that shit. That is so pretty.
Yeah, I mean, and she does work, y'all. So if you're interested in getting some work done for your channel, she does the animations for Cirrus. Definitely,
Knock,
Gaelic Knox is a person that you want to
Wow.
have do some work for you.
Knock,
Just
knock,
awesome.
they.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, they are a really amazing artist. They actually did some work for Sticks and Stonehenge as well.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
But yeah, they did some amazing freaking work for Sticks and Stonehenge as well. Like I've got a version of my avatar that I'm going to be sending to Knock pretty soon for that's backgroundless for the when he does the thumbnails and stuff. But it's my character with their finger out correcting you, with looking pissed off, and it's freaking great. It's amazing. I'm using it currently for my videos, for the Sumerian epic fail debunk videos, but they're an absolutely amazing artist. They actually did my avatar, the one that you guys normally see, the new one, not the older one, the one with the amazing freaking Haida style raven wings that they put all that extra effort into.
Yeah, definitely worth it, and shout them out.
Here, I just sent you the. I just sent you the other avatar, the one that I had, the one that I'm using for Sticks and Stonehenge.
Hey, Naka, am I right thinking?
Down. What did I do? Oops, sorry. Yeah.
Am I right thinking?
There we go.
Is that a bear skull?
Yes, that's a bear skull.
That's pretty cool.
And now I got Richard somehow messed up. All right, sorry. There we go.
But yeah, that's the awesome avatar that they did for me for Sticks and Stonehenge. Emmett's amazing.
Good friend of the channel, and man, how did everything get so jacked up? I'll be messing things up. I'll be messing everything up. We're getting there though. All right. So as always, these conversations with Richard are always better when. Sometimes I'll ask Richard to come into an open room, and you just can't really delve deep with Richard. I've had this conversation before, but at the same time, we didn't have it the way we did tonight. I thought it was really, really great, fascinating, a definite breath of fresh air after covering Mischa Popoff for a fucking month.
Bro. I'm sorry, man. I don't know what to tell you about Jill and Mischa and Matt. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, I was talking about it on my smaller channel this morning as I was trying to play video games and talk. I'm not very good at that part. Link in the description below. But I was talking about it a little bit. I needed something, and I've had people trying to tell me that I needed something for a while to really take my focus off of these extreme fundies. It was giving me a really bad shit again, toxicity again. So it's been really good having that to take the focus off.
It's hard not to get pissed off at the entire world when you're dealing with these fucking shitbags all the time.
Yeah, and me and Allie's been talking about it. I really want to, I'll never move away from this advocacy, but I really want to focus on other stuff that's maybe not so just emotionally draining and just toxic all the time. Some fun shit, some really crazy woo shit. We did Messenger. Let's look at some woo shit.
Well, and Knock and I have been talking about maybe doing a debunk series, that either of us can contribute to, because, I'm going to be launching the Pissed Off Polytheist series sometime in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to be launching Film Crusade, which is both of us talking every time we do that. But he and I were talking about doing a series that either of us could do in either of our editing styles, just debunking random woo from around the internet that's really, really fascinating. I was thinking about taking on essential oils, which is gonna bring the Hun bots and the Karens down on the channel. But you know what? There's a big thing going on with, since we're not monetized anymore, I can say this word on YouTube, with coronavirus. The anti-vaxxers. I saw somebody on Twitter today who was
You can't say coronavirus on YouTube?
You'll get demonetized immediately.
Why?
Because it's a contentious modern day topic, and because the Chinese government doesn't like it, and YouTube applies their policies unilaterally across countries.
So people, if you want to get paid, don't talk about one of the most important issues in the fucking world.
Or just don't use that word to talk around it,
It's so fucking ridiculous what we've come to as a society. Like, YouTube, get a fucking grip, seriously. I don't promote hate speech here. I don't do that. And you should be able to talk about the fucking coronavirus without worrying about monetization.
Oh, by the way,
sure.
I had lunch with another creator friend of mine today. It went extremely well, but his response when I told him what happened to our channel was, you had to have been mass reported if they struck the entire channel and not a single video. The algorithm will not hit a whole channel, it will only hit an individual video. So either there were lots of little reports across a long time, or we got mass reported, and it just so happened to coincide with the release of that particular video, which brings us back to our first theory.
I mean, I've had NIFBs flagging my videos for a long time. I've had literally people in the comment sections of my MMA Jenkins videos, Girl Defined videos, a lot of the Coffee and Bible Time videos telling me that they were going to flag me.
But dude, all that stuff's so funny.
Yeah, I know. I'm just having fun. And that's the thing, like YouTube, if you want to demonetize me for being a dick, then demonetize me for being a dick. Don't demonetize me for hate speech.
We didn't do that. But yeah, like coming back to that, aside from the hate speech thing, just kind of coming back to coronavirus, like, and the reasons that we're kind of talking about doing some of this woo shit, like, I'm sorry, if you think that your essential oils are going to cure your kid of, like, smallpox or epilepsy, or you think that not getting them the shot they need to not die in infancy is going to somehow stop the autism gene from acting, which, by the way, you saying, like, anti-vax moms, I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial, and that's, okay, Karen, if you think that your kid fucking dying from the measles and mumps is preferable to them being diagnosed with autism, you're fucking ableist, and you got some issues. You might want to seek some mental health there, Karen.
Like, no shit here, yo. I was just watching Skylar Fiction's recent debate on Modern Day Debate. Should marijuana be legalized? And the dude that he was debating against literally tried to link marijuana use to autism. I shit you not.
What?
It was fucking insane. And yeah, that might be my first like woo video, just like going at that motherfucker.
So, like, I want to look into essential oils because that's a big problem in the pagan community, right? Like, a lot of people in my community, they use them for magic, which is fine. They use them to make their house smell nice, which is also fine, as long as it's not lavender and you don't have cats. Because lavender essential oils, especially in the electric diffusers, can make your cat very sick. But, like, if you're gonna substitute essential oils for, like, actual, like, medical science, I mean, as a Hellenist, medical science is a gift from the gods. It is sacred. What the fuck? Like, what is wrong with you?
Well, I mean, you're as bad as the Christians that try to pray cancer away and they have graveyards full of dead children. I've actually covered these sects. There's a big one. I believe it was Idaho. I'm gonna have to look back at it. I should look back into that again. I call the video Speaker for the Dead after the Orson Scott Card Ender Game series, second book of the Ender Game series.
That is the best book in the Ender Game series, IMO.
It's one of the best titles of any book ever, I believe, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
There is a direct link between marijuana usage during pregnancy and your kids learning to ride skateboards, however.
Like, I would believe like a direct linkage of, kids eating cookies to dads that smoked weed. But fucking autism, come on now.
Born with the munchies.
All right, man. As always, we need to get out of here. I need to go to sleep. I told Brett, like, I can't even come on after the stream, dude, because like I'm trying to get more sleep. If I get more sleep, I find I'm more energized the next day.
No way.
What a concept. Science says water is wet, Naka.
I am going to start a workout routine.
It's a bunch of woo.
I've been looking really hard for a workout routine that would be something that I can do with my legs deteriorating the way that they are. So I think I found it. I'm going to start it tomorrow. So I'm going to try to stream at some point tomorrow. So if I'm sore and grumpy,
okay, so somebody really needs to, like, okay, so Richard, it has now been put upon us. our calling in life at this point is to figure out where the fuck the pod that replaced Naka is.
I'm telling you,
we need to find it. Like, you're talking aliens, man. Those fucking aliens landed.
I put all my first videos
they replaced
from YouTube.
Nock with an android. Like, I am now thoroughly convinced of this. You can't convince me that you're the real Nock anymore.
I started using my other channel again, and I put all my first videos from YouTube on private. And while the audio's horrible, the video's good enough to show you exactly how much weight I've gained. I was fucking thin 3.5 years ago. Not anymore. It's time to start working out.
I mean, let's face it. The real answer to this is Nock isn't drinking all of his willpower away anymore. And
yeah,
I'm proud of you.
I'm changing.
I'm proud of you for actually taking care of yourself. Like, all the jokes and the hyperbolic crap aside, I'm fucking proud of you, Nock. Like, I'm proud of you for taking naps and taking care of yourself and like taking days off when you're in pain and taking time to deal with your illness and other shit. Things that you did not do when I met you. Like, since you quit drinking, you've been really making an effort in your life, and it fucking shows. You're happier. And you look all sheepish right now because I'm saying nice things to you and you don't know how to deal with that. So I can say fuck you if that makes you more comfortable. But, like,
too bad.
I'm still proud of you.
I don't do real well with that type of stuff.
Dude, there's people that love you and care about you and want you to last, okay?
Okay, well, I appreciate you are my fucking brother, Nock. Like, you are my goddamn brother from another mother.
Well, and yeah, I feel the same. And you know, like, I'm trying to make changes. We're getting there. I'm still struggling with the weight thing. That's why my camera's been off most of the stream. But once I get a hold of that, then the smoking's gone. And once the smoking's gone, then I can really try to get healthy. The diet probably will never change, but, you know, baby steps. All right, it is 9:58.
You know what? You said you were never going to work out again for a while, and that's now changing. So you don't know if you're going to be able to put something green in your face someday.
You know, like, I don't. When you have your winter coat on and your brother talks about how much weight you've gained, that gets to you. Because in Michigan, you know, maybe in Florida, your winter coat. That would be okay. You know, people will notice that. In Michigan, your winter coat is thick. So when your brother's like, "Hey, dude, you're gaining weight," and I'm like, "Man, I'm wearing my fucking coat." That's when it's time to start working out.
Well, I mean, like I said, like, all of those nice things, I'm gonna make you uncomfortable again for 30 more seconds. I'm fucking proud of you. I really am. Like, you, Amen. I know how hard you've been working to keep to a lot of this stuff, and I know how contrary to all of your habits it is. And the fact that we're in March and you're still making these fucking changes means that this isn't some stupid January blitz. Like, you're actually dedicated. And it's not a Nock stream if both of our phones don't go off. So have a good night, everyone. But, like, I wanted to tell Nock in front of everybody how awesome you're doing.
Thank you.
Because, like, as your friend who talks to you every fucking day and appointed, like, maybe fired shoulder angel who tries to get you to do these things, the fact that you're actually starting to listen to me and your body is amazing.
I'm trying. We'll see how many push-ups and sit-ups I can do tomorrow.
Oh, you're going to hate yourself. Like, if you do squats, you're going to be in so much pain for, like, days, and you're going to be grumpy.
I'm going to get on the stream, and I'm going to be like, yeah, I did 150.
Yeah, you're going to be like, I did 10 and my legs are screaming, what the fuck is wrong with me? And everybody's going to be like, just walk tomorrow. Take a walk. It'll make you feel better.
Yeah, no, I'm going to be committed. You know, like, you know me. Like, if I can make it a routine, I'm good. I just got to make it a routine. That's my thing.
Yeah, you got to figure out what habit you're going to tack it onto. Like, what thing do you always do that you can be like, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm going to figure it out. I think I got it slated, like, right after I finish my video work. I'm going to work out, and then 10 minutes later, I'm going to complain about how fucking awful that hour-and-a-half workout was. So,
you know, it might even be better to go for, like, a workout that's maybe 20 or 30 minutes to start with, just to make sure that it's easy enough for you to stick to.
The workout I got, I think, is going to be good. I've got to play it. I've been looking. So, we'll see. I'm excited, but we are going to get out of here. Just thank you so much, Richard. These conversations are always so much fun.
I had a blast, man. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
always a good time. We'll do this again in the next month or so. I really got to get better at scheduling. I'm getting there. And the very last word is my Patreon screen needs to be updated. So if you're a new patron and you're not on the screen, I am sorry. I will do that tomorrow. That will be a focus. So peace out, y'all.
Conversation forgot.
We got about 30 seconds.
Hey, Allie, thanks for making effort